The dust kicked up around Deanna Harper's worn boots as she dismounted her tired mare outside the saloon in Glenrio, Texas, wondering if this God-forsaken place at the edge of the Panhandle would offer even a single decent meal before she continued her journey to nowhere in particular. It was the summer of 1882, and the sun beat down mercilessly on the small town that straddled the border between Texas and New Mexico territory, a place where travelers stopped briefly before moving on to somewhere better, somewhere with more promise. Deanna had been traveling for 3 weeks since leaving her failed ranch in Kansas, where drought and debt had consumed everything her late father had built. At 24 years old, she found herself alone in the world, with nothing but a horse, a worn saddle, and enough money to maybe last another month if she was careful. Her auburn hair hung in a braid down her back, dusty and neglected, and her green eyes held the kind of weariness that came from too many losses in too short a time. The saloon was dim and relatively cool compared to the blazing heat outside. A few men sat at tables, playing cards and drinking whiskey, their conversations muted and lazy in the afternoon lull. Deanna approached the bar, where a portly man with a graying beard wiped down glasses with a rag that had seen cleaner days. "What can I get you, miss?" he asked, his tone neither welcoming nor hostile. "Whatever food you have available and water for me and my horse," Deanna said, placing a few coins on the scarred wooden surface. "We have got beef stew and cornbread. Horse trough is outside on the left." Deanna nodded and took her coins back, waiting to see the food first. She had learned the hard way not to pay before receiving goods. As she stood there, the saloon doors swung open, and a man walked in who immediately commanded attention without seeming to try. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of steel in firelight. His clothes were work-worn but clean, and he carried himself with a quiet confidence that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. He looked to be around 27 or 28, with the kind of sun-weathered face that came from years of honest outdoor work. "Harrison," the bartender greeted him with genuine warmth. "The usual. Just water today, Pete. Too hot for anything else." His voice was deep and smooth, with a hint of something Deanna could not quite place, perhaps a gentleness that seemed at odds with his rugged appearance. Harrison Reynolds noticed Deanna then, his gray-blue eyes meeting hers briefly before he offered a polite nod. Deanna returned it, then looked away, not wanting to engage. She had learned that prolonged eye contact with strange men often led to unwanted attention and complications she did not need. Pete brought out her stew and cornbread, and Deanna paid him before taking her meal to a corner table. The food was better than she expected, hot and reasonably well seasoned. She ate slowly, making it last, knowing it might be her only meal of the day. "Passing through?" a voice asked. Deanna looked up to find Harrison standing a respectful distance from her table, his hat now in his hands. Up close, she could see the genuine curiosity in his face without any of the leering or presumption she had come to expect from men in saloons. "I am," she replied carefully. "Where are you heading? Does it matter?" Harrison seemed to consider this, then offered a slight smile. "I suppose it does not. Just making conversation. Not many travelers come through Glenrio this time of year unless they are desperate or lost." "Maybe I am both," Deanna said, a hint of challenge in her voice. "Maybe you are," Harrison agreed. "If you need work, my ranch could use an extra hand for a few days. We are bringing cattle down from the northern pasture, and my regular hands are stretched thin. The pay is fair, and the food is better than what you are eating now." Deanna studied him, looking for the angle, the catch. Men did not typically offer women ranch work, especially not strangers passing through town. Why would you offer work to someone you do not know? Because you look capable, you look honest, and you look like you need it, Harrison said simply. If I am wrong about any of those things, I will find out soon enough, but I have always been a decent judge of character. There was something in his straightforward manner that made Diana want to trust him, which immediately made her suspicious. Trust had led to betrayal too many times in her recent past. Still, she needed money and ranch work was something she knew well. "What is the pay?" she asked. $2 a day, plus meals and a place to sleep in the bunkhouse. The work is for 5 days, maybe 6 if the cattle prove difficult. It was fair pay, better than fair actually. Diana finished her stew, using the cornbread to soak up the last of the broth while she thought it over. She could stretch her remaining money further if she earned a bit more, and maybe this town would prove to be a decent place to rest for a short while. "When do I start?" she finally asked. "Dawn tomorrow." Ranch is about 4 miles north of here, right before the terrain starts getting rough. You cannot miss it. Big gate with an R burned into the crossbeam. Name is the Rolling River Ranch, though the river is more of a creek most of the year. Diana nodded. "I will be there." Harrison placed his hat back on his head and tipped it to her. "Harrison Reynolds, by the way. Diana Harper. Pleasure to meet you, Miss Harper. See you at dawn." With that, he turned and left, his spurs making soft music as he walked across the wooden floor. Diana sat for a few more minutes, finishing her water and contemplating her decision. She had intended to keep moving, to find some bigger town where she could disappear into anonymity and figure out what to do with the rest of her life. But 5 or 6 days of work would not hurt, and there was something about Harrison Reynolds that intrigued her despite her better judgment. She spent that night camped just outside of town, too frugal to spend money on a hotel room when she had a bedroll and the weather was clear. The stars were brilliant in the West Texas sky, countless and bright, and Diana lay awake for a long time, thinking about her father, about the ranch she had lost, about the uncertain road ahead. When dawn broke pink and gold over the flat landscape, Diana was already saddled up and riding north. She found the Rolling River Ranch exactly where Harrison had said it would be. The property was impressive, well maintained with sturdy fences and buildings that showed care and investment. The ranch house itself was a solid 2-story structure made of local stone and timber, with a wide porch that wrapped around at least 2 sides. Several horses were corralled near a large barn, and Diana could see cattle grazing in distant pastures. This was not some struggling operation. This was a successful ranch, which made her wonder even more why Harrison had offered her work. A younger man, perhaps 19 or 20, approached as she rode up. "You Miss Harper?" "I am. Boss said you would be coming. I am Travis." "You can put your horse in the barn, 3rd stall on the left. Once you are settled, come to the main corral. We are sorting out the horses for the drive." Diana did as instructed, taking care of her mare and making sure she had fresh water and feed. The barn was clean and organized, another sign of a well-run operation. She grabbed her work gloves from her saddlebag and made her way to the corral. Harrison was there with 3 other men, all looking at a group of horses with a critical eye. When he saw Diana, he waved her over. "Morning, Miss Harper. Glad you made it. These are my hands. You met Travis, that is Jorge, and that is Samuel." The men nodded to her, their expressions neutral but not unwelcoming. "We need to pick out the 12 best horses for the drive. We will be herding about 200 head of cattle from the northern pasture back to the main ranch. It is rough terrain in parts, so we need horses with good stamina and steady temperaments." Diana looked over the horses, her experienced eye quickly assessing each one. Growing up on a ranch had taught her well, and despite everything she had lost, she still had her knowledge and skills. "That bay mare," she said, pointing. "Good chest depth, strong hindquarters, and she is alert but not flighty, and the sorrel gelding beside her. He has got the build for endurance." Harrison looked at the horses she had indicated, then back at her with something like approval in his eyes. "Good choices. What else?" They spent the next hour selecting horses and discussing the logistics of the cattle drive. Deanna found herself relaxing slightly, falling into the familiar rhythm of ranch work and planning. The other men gradually warmed to her as they realized she knew what she was talking about, offering suggestions and listening to her input. By mid-morning, they had their horses selected and saddled. Harrison led them out toward the northern pasture, a ride that would take most of the day. Deanna rode beside Jorge, a quiet man in his 40s who had worked on the Rolling River Ranch for over a decade. "Boss is a good man," Jorge said after a long stretch of companionable silence. "Fair, honest, works harder than any of us. He took over the ranch from his father about 5 years ago and has built it into something really special." "He seems competent," Deanna said carefully. "More than competent. He is the kind of man you want to ride beside when things get difficult. And out here, things get difficult pretty regular." Deanna absorbed this information, adding it to her growing impression of Harrison Reynolds. She watched him ride ahead, his posture easy and relaxed in the saddle, occasionally turning to check on the group or to point out something in the landscape. They stopped at midday to rest the horses and eat the food packed in their saddlebags. Harrison had been right. The food was good, better than saloon fare. There were thick sandwiches of cold beef and cheese, fresh tomatoes from someone's garden, and canteens of cool water that had been wrapped in wet cloth to keep them from heating up too much. "Miss Harper," Harrison said, settling on a rock near where she sat in the shade of a scrubby mesquite tree. "Jorge tells me you grew up on a ranch." "I did. In Kansas near Dodge City. My father raised cattle and horses. That is good country when the weather cooperates." "It can be," Deanna agreed, "but it did not cooperate enough the past 2 years. Drought took everything." Harrison was quiet for a moment. "I am sorry. Losing a ranch is like losing a piece of yourself." Deanna looked at him sharply. "You sound like you know something about that." "My father nearly lost this place when I was a boy. Bank was going to foreclose, and we did not have anywhere else to go. My mother had died the year before, and my father was drowning in grief and debt. But some of the neighboring ranchers came together and helped us through. They loaned us cattle, gave my father work, helped us hold on until we could get back on our feet. I have never forgotten that kindness." "That is rare," Deanna said softly. "Most people only look out for themselves." "Some people," Harrison corrected. "Not all. I have found that there is still plenty of goodness in this world if you know where to look for it." Deanna wanted to believe him, but her recent experiences had taught her otherwise. Still, she appreciated his optimism, even if she could not share it. They reached the northern pasture by late afternoon. The cattle were scattered across a wide area of grassland that was greener than the land closer to town, fed by a natural spring that bubbled up from underground. Deanna counted approximately 250 head, more than Harrison had estimated. "We will camp here tonight," Harrison announced. "Get a fresh start in the morning. Travis, you and Samuel set up camp. Jorge, Miss Harper, and I will do a count and check the herd for any injuries or illness." The work was familiar and comforting to Deanna. She rode among the cattle, noting a few minor issues. A steer with a slight limp, a heifer who seemed to be favoring one side, a few calves who looked smaller than they should. She reported her findings to Harrison, who listened carefully and made notes in a small book he kept in his vest pocket. "You have got a good eye," he said. We will separate out the ones who are not ready for the drive and bring them down later." As the sun began to set, they gathered around the campfire that Travis and Samuel had built. Someone had brought a pot for coffee, and the rich aroma filled the air as they ate a simple meal of beans and bacon with hard biscuits. The conversation was easy, the men sharing stories of past cattle drives and horses they had known. Diana mostly listened, content to absorb the camaraderie without fully participating. She had been alone for so long that being part of a group again felt strange, almost uncomfortable, even though a part of her craved this exact kind of connection. "You are quiet, Miss Harper," Harrison observed, passing her the coffee pot so she could refill her cup. "Just tired," Diana said, which was partially true. "Fair enough. It has been a long day." He paused, then added, "You did good work today. I appreciate your help." "You are paying me. No appreciation necessary." "I disagree. Plenty of people do the minimum for their pay." "You are doing more than that. It deserves acknowledgement." Deanna did not know how to respond to that, so she just nodded and focused on her coffee. But something warm unfurled in her chest, something she had not felt in a long time. It took her a moment to recognize it as pride, as the satisfaction of being valued for her work and her skills. That night, she lay in her bedroll looking up at the stars, listening to the sounds of the cattle settling down and the men's soft snores from their own bedrolls. She had not felt this peaceful in months, maybe years. It was unsettling and comforting all at once. The next 3 days were hard work. They sorted the cattle, separated out the ones who were not ready for the drive, and began the slow process of moving the herd south toward the main ranch. Deanna threw herself into the work, riding from dawn until dusk, helping to keep the cattle together and moving in the right direction. Harrison was always there, either beside her or nearby, offering guidance when needed but mostly trusting her to know what to do. She appreciated that. Too many men would have assumed she needed constant supervision simply because she was a woman. On the third evening, as they were making camp, a thunderstorm rolled in fast and fierce. The cattle began to get restless, sensing the change in the weather, and the horses started to dance nervously. "Everyone mount up," Harrison shouted over the rising wind. "We need to keep them calm or they will stampede." Deanna was in her saddle in seconds, riding toward the outer edge of the herd. The first raindrops were huge and cold, splattering against her face and soaking through her shirt. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the churning mass of cattle in brief, stark flashes. She began singing, an old lullaby her father used to sing to skittish animals. Her voice was not strong, but it was steady, and the cattle nearest to her began to calm slightly, their ears swiveling toward the sound. Harrison appeared beside her, adding his deeper voice to hers. Together they sang, moving slowly around the herd, keeping the cattle from bolting. The other hands joined in, creating a circle of sound and presence that gradually settled the nervous animals. The storm lasted for nearly an hour, drenching them all and turning the ground into slick mud. But the cattle did not stampede and no one was hurt. By the time the rain stopped and the clouds began to break apart, revealing patches of starry sky, they were all exhausted but relieved. "That could have been a disaster," Samuel said, wringing water out of his hat. "Good thinking with the singing, Miss Harper." "My father taught me that trick," Deanna said, shivering slightly in her wet clothes. "Works most times if you start early enough." Harrison dismounted and approached her. "You are soaked through. We have got a tarp set up over the supply wagon. Go get dry clothes if you have them, and we will get a fire going." Diana wanted to argue, to prove she was tough enough to handle being wet and cold, but her teeth were starting to chatter, and she knew that was foolish pride. She nodded and went to the wagon, where she dug out her only other set of clothes from her saddlebag. When she returned to the fire, wrapped in a blanket while her wet clothes dried on rocks near the flames, Harrison handed her a cup of hot coffee. "You did well tonight," he said quietly. "Really well. You might have saved us a stampede." "You and the others helped," Diana said. "Yes, but you started it. You saw what was needed and you did it without waiting for orders or permission. That takes initiative and confidence." Diana sipped her coffee, feeling that warm glow in her chest again. When was the last time someone had praised her like this? Her father, maybe, years ago before the worry and stress had consumed him. "Can I ask you something, Miss Harper?" Harrison said after a moment. "You can ask." "What are you running from?" Diana stiffened. "What makes you think I am running from anything?" "Because I have seen that look before, in the mirror and in the eyes of others. You have got the look of someone who lost something important and does not know how to find their way forward." For a long moment, Diana considered deflecting, changing the subject, or simply walking away. But something about the firelight and the exhaustion and Harrison's genuine, non-judgmental tone made her want to answer honestly. "I am not running from anything," she said slowly. "I am running towards something, but I have got no idea what it is. My father died 18 months ago. The bank took the ranch 6 months after that. I have been drifting ever since, looking for a place that feels like home again. So far, I have not found it." Harrison nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Home is not always a place. Sometimes it is people. Sometimes it is a feeling." "That sounds like something from a poem." "Maybe it is. Doesn't make it less true." He paused, then added, "You have got a home here for as long as you need it, Miss Harper. Even after this cattle drive is done. I meant what I said about needing extra help. The offer stands." Diana looked at him, trying to read his motives. In the flickering firelight, his face was open and honest, without any hint of ulterior motives or expectations beyond what he had stated. "Why?" she asked. "You do not know me. I could be trouble." "You could be," Harrison agreed. "But I do not think you are. I think you are someone who has had a run of bad luck and could use a break. And I think you are a damn good ranch hand who would be an asset to this operation. Seems like a situation where everyone benefits." Diana did not answer right away. She was tempted, more tempted than she wanted to admit. The idea of staying in one place for more than a few days, of having steady work and steady pay, of being part of something again, it was appealing. But it was also terrifying because settling meant risking loss again, and she was not sure she could survive another loss. "I will think about it," she finally said. "That is all I ask." They finished the cattle drive 2 days later, bringing the herd into the main ranch's pastures without any further incidents. The work had been hard but satisfying, and Diana found herself reluctant to leave when the 5 days were up. Harrison paid her as promised, counting out $10 into her hand. "Plus 2 extra for the work during the storm," he said, adding 2 more coins. "That was not part of the agreement. Consider it a bonus for exceptional work." He met her eyes steadily. "Have you thought about what I said? About staying on?" Diana had thought about little else. During the long hours in the saddle and the quiet evenings by the campfire, she had turned the idea over and over in her mind. Every practical consideration told her to accept, but fear held her back. "I would need my own space," she heard herself say. "Not the bunkhouse with the men." Harrison's face lit up with a smile that transformed his features, making him look younger and more carefree. "There is a small cabin about a quarter-mile from the main house. Used to be for my father's foreman, but it has been empty since he retired 2 years ago. It has got a good roof, a stove, a bed, and a table. Nothing fancy, but it is private and sturdy. I will need time off at least 1 day a week." "Fair enough. Sunday is usually quiet around here anyway." Deanna took a deep breath. Was she really doing this? Was she really agreeing to stay? What are the terms? Room, board, and $50 a month to start. More if you prove as valuable as I think you will be. You work alongside the other hands doing whatever needs doing. Sometimes that is herding cattle. Sometimes it is mending fences. Sometimes it is breaking horses or doctoring sick animals. The work varies with the seasons and the needs of the ranch. And if it does not work out, if I decide to leave or you decide I am not what you need, then we shake hands and part ways with no hard feelings. I am not asking you to sign your life away, Miss Harper. I am offering you a job and a place to stay for as long as it suits both of us. It was a generous offer, more than generous. Deanna knew she would be a fool to turn it down. All right, she said. I will stay. The smile that crossed Harrison's face made her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with the conversation and everything to do with how handsome he looked when he was happy. Then welcome to the Rolling River Ranch, Miss Harper. Let me show you to your cabin. The cabin was exactly as he had described. Small but well built, with a single room that held a bed, a table with 2 chairs, a stove, and some basic shelves. There was a window that looked out toward the main house and another that faced the open range. It was clean and dry, and to Deanna, who had been sleeping on the ground or in cheap hotels for months, it looked like paradise. I will have Travis bring some supplies for you, Harrison said. Blankets, dishes, that sort of thing. If you need anything else, just let me know. This is more than enough, Deanna said, running her hand along the smooth wood of the table. Thank you, Harrison. It was the first time she had used his given name, and something shifted between them at the sound of it. Harrison seemed to feel it too because he stood very still for a moment, his eyes on hers. You are welcome, Deanna, he said softly. After he left, Deanna sat on the edge of the bed and looked around her new home. It was strange how quickly her plans had changed. Just a week ago, she had been passing through Glenrio with no intention of staying. Now she was settling into a cabin on the Rolling River Ranch, preparing to make a life here, at least for a while. She did not let herself think too hard about the man who had made it all possible, or about the way her pulse quickened when he smiled at her, or about the growing warmth in her chest every time they worked together. That way lay complications she was not ready to face. The first few weeks at the ranch established a rhythm. Deanna woke before dawn, helped with the morning chores, and spent her days doing whatever work needed doing. She mended fences with Jorge, helped Travis break in young horses, assisted Samuel with the vegetable garden that supplied much of the ranch's food, and worked alongside Harrison to manage the cattle. The physical labor was demanding, but Deanna thrived on it. For the first time since losing her father's ranch, she felt useful and valued. The other hands accepted her as one of their own, and even the occasional ranch visitors quickly learned to treat her with respect when they saw how hard she worked and how much Harrison clearly valued her opinions. Harrison himself was a constant, steady presence. He was up before everyone else and the last to bed, always finding something that needed his attention. But he never asked his hands to do anything he would not do himself, and he had a gift for making people feel appreciated and respected. Deanna tried to keep her interactions with him professional, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. She found herself looking for him throughout the day, feeling a small thrill of pleasure when their eyes met across a corral, or when they ended up working side by side. She noticed little things about him. The way he always checked on his horses before seeing to his own needs, the kindness with which he spoke to everyone regardless of their position, the quiet competence with which he handled problems. One evening about a month after she had started staying on permanently, Deanna was washing up at the pump behind her cabin when Harrison approached, leading a beautiful paint mare. "Evening," he said. "I wanted to give you something." Deanna dried her hands on her skirt, curious. "What is it?" "Your mare is a good horse, but she is getting old and she deserves an easier life. I thought you might like this one instead." He gestured to the paint. "Her name is Rosie. She is 6 years old, well-trained, and has the best temperament of any horse I have ever known. I have been working with her for the past 3 years, and I think you two would be a good match." Diana approached the mare slowly, offering her hand for Rosie to sniff. The horse whickered softly and nuzzled Diana's palm, her dark eyes gentle and intelligent. "Harrison, I cannot accept this. A horse like her is worth a small fortune. Consider it part of your compensation. A ranch hand needs a good horse, and Rosie needs a rider who will appreciate her. Besides, your old mare can spend her remaining years grazing in the pasture without having to work. Everybody wins." Diana stroked Rosie's neck, feeling the smooth warmth of her coat. The gesture was incredibly generous, but more than that, it showed a thoughtfulness that touched her deeply. Harrison had noticed that her horse was aging and had taken steps to ensure both Diana and her old mare would be well cared for. "Thank you," she said quietly. "This is very kind. You have earned it. You work harder than most men I know, and you never complain. You deserve something nice." They stood there in the fading light, with Rosie between them, and Diana felt the air change, becoming charged with something unspoken. Harrison reached out as if to touch her arm, then seemed to think better of it and pulled back. "I should let you get back to your evening," he said, his voice slightly rougher than usual. "I will see you at breakfast." After he left, Diana spent a long time with Rosie, brushing her coat and talking to her softly. The mare responded with patience and gentleness, and Diana felt her heart opening in ways that frightened her. She was becoming attached to this place, to these people, and most dangerously of all, to Harrison Reynolds. The summer heat intensified as July arrived, bringing with it the kind of temperatures that made work brutal and sleep difficult. The cattle became sluggish, and the ranch hands took to starting their workdays even earlier to avoid the worst of the afternoon heat. One particularly scorching day, Diana was helping Harrison repair a section of fence in one of the far pastures. They worked mostly in silence, the heat sapping their energy for conversation. Diana was hammering a nail when she heard Harrison curse softly. She looked up to see him examining his hand, blood welling from a deep gash where a piece of sharp wire had caught him. "How bad is it?" she asked, immediately setting down her hammer and moving toward him. "Not too bad. Just caught me off guard." Diana pulled a bandana from her pocket, one she had dampened with water for the heat, and pressed it against the wound. "We need to clean this properly. Barbed wire can cause infection. It will be fine. Harrison Reynolds, do not be stubborn. Come on, let us go back to my cabin. I have got clean water and proper bandages there." He allowed her to lead him away from the fence line, and they rode back to her cabin in silence. Once inside the relative coolness, Diana gestured for him to sit at the table while she gathered her medical supplies. Things she always kept on hand from her years, helping her father with ranch injuries. She worked carefully, cleaning the wound with soap and water, then wrapping it with clean cloth. Harrison watched her face as she worked, and when she glanced up, their eyes locked. "You are very gentle," he said quietly. "I have had practice. My father was always getting himself hurt on something or other. You must miss him. Every day." Diana finished tying off the bandage, but she did not immediately release his hand. "He was everything to me after my mother died. When I lost him, I lost my whole world." Harrison turned his hand in hers so that he was holding her fingers instead. "I understand that. When my mother died, I thought my father would die too from the grief. It took years before he could smile again without it looking like it cost him something. Is your father still alive?" "No, he passed about 6 years ago." Hart gave out one night in his sleep. At least it was peaceful. They sat there, hands linked, sharing their grief and understanding. Then, slowly, Harrison lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Deanna," he said, his voice low and serious. "I need to tell you something." Her heart began to race. "What is it?" "I did not offer you work just because I needed another hand. I mean, I did need help, that part was true. But from the moment I saw you in that saloon, something in me just knew. I know that sounds foolish and fanciful, but I cannot think of another way to describe it. I knew you were important somehow, that you were meant to be here." Diana's breath caught. "Harrison, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything. I just needed you to know that what I feel for you goes beyond employer and employee, beyond friendship even. I care about you, Deanna Harper, more than I have cared about anyone in a very long time." She should pull her hand away. She should remind him that she was just passing through, that she did not plan to stay forever, that getting involved would only lead to heartbreak. But instead, she found herself leaning forward, closing the distance between them. "I care about you too," she whispered. "I've been trying not to, but I care about you so much it scares me." Harrison lifted his other hand to cup her cheek, his touch feather light and questioning. "Why does it scare you?" "Because everyone I care about leaves me one way or another. My mother, my father, the ranch I grew up on. I am afraid that if I let myself care too much, I will lose you too." "Life has got no guarantees," Harrison said. "I cannot promise I will be here forever, Deanna. None of us can promise that. But I can promise that whatever time we have got, I will spend it caring for you, respecting you, and doing everything in my power to make you happy." Is not that enough? Was it enough? Could she take that risk? Deanna looked into his eyes and saw honesty, warmth, and something that looked very much like love, and she realized that she had already taken the risk. She had already opened her heart to him, already let him in past all her defenses. "Yes," she said, "it is enough." Harrison kissed her then, soft and sweet, a kiss full of promise and possibility. Deanna melted into it, her hands coming up to rest on his shoulders, feeling the solid strength of him beneath her fingers. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks," Harrison admitted. "So have I." They spent the rest of the afternoon in her cabin, talking and kissing and making plans. Harrison told her about his dreams for the ranch, about wanting to expand the operation and maybe start breeding horses seriously. Deanna shared her memories of her father's ranch and her ideas for improving cattle yields. As the sun began to set, Harrison reluctantly stood to leave. "People will talk if I stay much longer. Let them talk. I want to do this right, Deanna. I want to court you properly, not give people reason to gossip or question your reputation." Deanna appreciated his consideration, even as part of her wanted to throw caution to the wind. "All right. How does one properly court someone on a ranch in the middle of nowhere?" Harrison grinned. "You will see. I can be romantic when I put my mind to it." He proved his point over the following weeks. Despite their demanding work schedule, Harrison found ways to make Deanna feel special and cherished. He brought her wildflowers he found while riding the property. He saved her the best pieces of meat at communal meals. He taught her to play chess in the evenings, sitting across from her at her cabin's small table while the lamp flickered and moths bumped against the window. One Sunday, their day off, he saddled Rosie and his own horse and led Deanna on a ride to a place he called the Springs. It was a hidden oasis tucked into a rocky outcropping, where clear water bubbled up from underground and created a small pool surrounded by cottonwood trees. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch," Harrison said as they dismounted. I come here when I need to think or when the world gets too heavy." "It is beautiful," Deanna breathed, taking in the green shade and the sound of water. In the harsh landscape of West Texas, this place seemed almost magical. They sat by the water, and Harrison pulled a cloth-wrapped package from his saddlebag. Inside was fresh bread, cheese, and apples, a simple but thoughtful picnic lunch. "I have been thinking," he said as they ate, "about the future, about what I want." "And what do you want?" Harrison took her hand. "I want you to stay, not just for a few months or until something better comes along. I want you to stay permanently as my partner in every sense of the word. I want to build a life with you, Deanna. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are here. I want to work alongside you, making this ranch into something even better than it already is. And eventually, if you will have me, I want you to be my wife." Deanna felt tears prick her eyes. "Harrison, that is a big commitment. Are you sure that is what you want? We have only known each other for 3 months. I have never been more sure of anything, but I am not asking you to marry me right this second. I am asking if you can see a future here with me. I am asking if what we have got is worth building on." Deanna looked around at the beautiful hidden spring, then back at Harrison's hopeful, earnest face. She thought about the past 3 months, about how she had gone from being a drifter with no purpose to being part of something meaningful. She thought about the cabin that had started to feel like home, about the work that challenged and satisfied her, about the man who had given her a reason to stop running. "Yes," she said, "I can see a future here with you." The kiss he gave her then was deeper, more passionate, full of relief and joy and promise. They stayed at the springs until the sun began to set, talking and dreaming and planning, building castles in the air that somehow felt solid and real. As the season changed from summer to fall, Diana and Harrison's relationship deepened. They were careful to maintain propriety around the other ranch hands, but everyone knew they were courting, and most people seemed genuinely happy about it. Jorge told Deanna that he had never seen Harrison so content. Travis mentioned that the boss smiled more in the past few months than he had in years. The work continued, seasonal and demanding. They prepared for winter, ensuring the cattle had adequate shelter and feed stores were built up. Deanna proved invaluable during this time, her knowledge from her father's ranch complementing Harrison's own experience. One evening in late October, as the first real cold snap arrived, Harrison invited Deanna to dinner in the main house. She had been in the house before for meetings and quick consultations, but never for a private meal. The house was warm and welcoming, with a fire crackling in the stone fireplace and the smell of roasting chicken filling the air. Harrison had clearly gone to effort, setting the table with actual china plates and lighting candles. "Did you cook this?" Deanna asked, amused and touched. "I did. I am not completely helpless in the kitchen, you know." He pulled out a chair for her. "I wanted to do something special for you." The meal was delicious, the chicken perfectly roasted with potatoes and carrots and fresh bread. They ate and talked, their conversation flowing easily as it always did. After they finished, Harrison stood and pulled a small box from his pocket. Diana's heart jumped. Was he proposing? Was she ready for that? But when he opened the box, it did not contain a ring. Instead, there was a delicate gold locket on a fine chain. "This was my mother's," Harrison said softly. "My father gave it to her when they got engaged. Inside there is a picture of them on their wedding day. I have been saving it, waiting for the right person to give it to." He fastened the locket around Deanna's neck, his fingers gentle on her skin. Deanna opened it to see a faded photograph of a young couple, both smiling at the camera with such joy and hope that it made her throat tight. "Harrison, this is precious. Are you sure you want me to have it?" "I am absolutely certain. My mother would have liked you, Deanna. She valued hard work and honesty and kindness, and you have got all of those qualities in abundance. I think she would be happy knowing her locket was with someone like you." Deanna touched the locket, feeling the weight of it, the history and love it represented. "Thank you. I will treasure it." "There is something else," Harrison said, taking her hands. "I know I said I would wait, that I would give you time, but Deanna, I cannot wait any more. Not because I am impatient, but because I am sure. I am more sure of this than I have been of anything in my entire life." He dropped to one knee, and Diana's breath caught. "Deanna Harper, you came into my life like a summer storm, unexpected and powerful, and you changed everything. You have made this ranch feel like a true home, made my work feel like partnership instead of burden, and made my heart feel full in a way I did not know was possible. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you every single day. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Deanna's face, but she was smiling, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "Yes," she said. "Yes, of course I will marry you." Harrison stood and swept her into his arms, kissing her with a passion and tenderness that made her dizzy. When they finally broke apart, both of them were laughing and crying at the same time. "I do not have a ring yet," Harrison admitted. "I wanted to ask you first, make sure you said yes before I went to the expense." "I do not need a ring," Deanna said. "I just need you. You are getting a ring anyway, a beautiful one worthy of you. We will go into town this week and pick one out together." They spent the rest of the evening making plans. They decided to marry in the spring, giving them time to prepare and to notify what little family they each had scattered across the country. Deanna had an aunt in Missouri who she hoped would come, and Harrison had cousins in Colorado who he wanted to invite. The news of their engagement spread quickly through the ranch, and the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Jorge shook Harrison's hand with a smile that creased his weathered face. Travis whooped and offered to organize a party. Samuel, the quietest of the hands, simply nodded and said, "About time." Winter came in earnest, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. The work changed, becoming more about maintenance and survival than expansion and growth. Deanna and Harrison spent more time in the main house during the evenings, planning their wedding and their future. They decided Deanna would move into the main house after the marriage, but they would keep her cabin for guests or for future ranch hands who might need it. They talked about the possibility of children, both admitting they wanted them, but agreeing not to rush. They discussed expanding the horse breeding operation and maybe buying the adjoining property if it ever came up for sale. On Christmas Eve, the ranch hands and Deanna and Harrison gathered in the main house for a celebration. There was food and drink and music, with Travis playing fiddle and Jorge joining in on harmonica. They sang carols and told stories, and Deanna felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire blazing in the hearth. This was family, she realized. Not the family she had been born into, but the family she had chosen and who had chosen her in return. Looking around at these people who had welcomed her and accepted her, and especially at Harrison, whose eyes never strayed far from her, Deanna felt truly at home for the first time since losing her father's ranch. The winter passed slowly but peacefully. Deanna and Harrison settled into a comfortable rhythm, working together during the day and spending evenings planning their future. The locket never left Deanna's neck, and she would often touch it absently, drawing comfort from its weight and the connection it represented to Harrison's family history. In February, they made a trip into town to file the necessary paperwork for their marriage and to purchase Deanna's ring. Harrison insisted she choose something she truly loved, and after trying on several options, Deanna selected a simple gold band with 3 small diamonds set in a row. It was elegant without being ostentatious, practical enough for ranch work but beautiful enough to make her breath catch every time she looked at it. As spring approached, preparations for the wedding intensified. Harrison's cousins sent word that they would be coming, and Deanna's Aunt Mary wrote a warm letter expressing her delight and confirming her attendance. They decided to hold the ceremony at the ranch, with the local minister officiating and a simple reception following. Deanna sewed her own wedding dress, a practical but lovely creation in cream-colored cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. She had never been particularly skilled with a needle, but she poured her heart into every stitch, wanting to wear something she had made with her own hands for this most important day. The wedding was set for the first Saturday in May, when the wildflowers would be blooming and the weather would be mild. As the day approached, Deanna found herself alternating between excitement and nervousness. She was certain about Harrison, absolutely certain, but the permanence of marriage still felt daunting to someone who had lost so much. The night before the wedding, Diana stayed in her cabin, tradition dictating that she and Harrison spend their last night as unmarried people apart. Her Aunt Mary, who had arrived 3 days earlier, stayed with her, helping her with last-minute preparations and offering the kind of maternal comfort Diana had been missing for years. "You are making a good choice," Mary said as she helped Deanna press her wedding dress one final time. "That young man loves you deeply. I can see it in the way he looks at you, the way he speaks about you. Your father would have approved." "I wish he could be here," Deanna said softly. "He is here in his way. I believe those we love never truly leave us." Mary touched the locket at Deanna's throat. "Just like Harrison's mother is here with you, watching over you both." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and beautiful, with a brilliant blue sky and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of wildflowers and fresh grass. Deanna dressed with shaking hands, her aunt helping with the tiny buttons down the back of her dress. The locket rested at her throat, and the ring that Harrison had given her as a pre-wedding gift sat snug on her finger. The ceremony was to take place in the ranch's front yard, where Harrison had built a simple arbor covered in flowering vines. Chairs had been set up for the guests, maybe 30 people in total, a mixture of ranch hands, neighbors, and family. It was small and intimate, exactly what both Diana and Harrison wanted. As Deanna walked toward the arbor on her aunt's arm, her eyes found Harrison and stayed there. He looked handsome in a new suit, his hair neatly combed, his eyes bright with emotion. When she reached him and took his hands, she felt all her nervousness melt away. This was right. This was where she was meant to be. The minister's words washed over her, familiar and comforting. She and Harrison had written their own vows, wanting to speak from their hearts. "Deanna," Harrison said, his voice strong despite the emotion in his eyes, "you wandered into my life when I did not even know I was looking for someone. You have been my partner, my friend, and my love. You have made me want to be better, to build something lasting, to create a legacy worth passing on. I promise to stand beside you in good times and bad, to respect your strength and support your dreams, to love you with everything I have got for as long as I draw breath." Deanna swallowed hard, her own emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "Harrison, you gave me a home when I had lost mine. You gave me purpose when I was drifting. You gave me love when I had forgotten what it felt like. You saw worth in me when I could not see it in myself. I promise to be your partner in all things, to work beside you and dream with you, to honor the trust you have placed in me, and to love you fiercely and faithfully for all my days." The minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Harrison kissed her with such tenderness and joy that Diana felt tears slip down her cheeks. Around them, people cheered and applauded, but Diana barely heard them. In that moment, there was only Harrison, only the man who had become her future, her home, her everything. The reception was simple but joyful. There was food and music and dancing, with the celebration lasting well into the evening. Deanna danced with Harrison, with Jorge, with Travis, even with old Samuel, who claimed he had not danced in 20 years. She laughed until her sides hurt, ate until she was full, and felt loved in a way that seemed almost miraculous. As the sun set and the guests began to depart, Harrison took Deanna's hand and led her toward the main house, which was now officially their home together. He swept her up in his arms to carry her over the threshold, and Deanna laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Welcome home, Mrs. Reynolds," he said, kissing her softly. "I was home the moment I met you," Deanna replied. "I just did not know it yet." Their wedding night was tender and sweet, a discovery of each other that felt both new and somehow inevitable. In Harrison's arms, Deanna felt safe and cherished, all her fears and doubts finally quieted. The years that followed were full and rich. Deanna and Harrison built their life together, working the ranch side by side, facing challenges and celebrating triumphs as a team. The first year of their marriage brought a harsh winter that tested their cattle herds, but they weathered it together, losing fewer animals than most neighboring ranches thanks to their careful preparation. The second year brought expansion, with Harrison and Deanna purchasing the adjoining property when it came up for sale, nearly doubling the size of the Rolling River Ranch. It was a gamble that required taking on debt, but it paid off, allowing them to increase their herds and start the horse breeding operation they had dreamed about. In their third year of marriage, Deanna discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and not a small amount of terror. Deanna was 28 now, Harrison 31, and the idea of becoming parents felt both wonderful and overwhelming. "We can do this," Harrison assured her, holding her close. "We have built a ranch together. We can certainly manage one small baby." Deanna laughed. "You have clearly never been around a baby if you think they are easy to manage." But when their son was born on a cool October morning, red-faced and squalling and absolutely perfect, Deanna fell in love all over again. They named him Michael Harrison Reynolds, after Harrison's father and Harrison himself, and from the moment he entered the world, he became the center of their universe. Michael was a healthy, happy baby who seemed to thrive on ranch life. By the time he was 2, he was toddling after his father, trying to help with chores and declaring himself a cowboy. Deanna watched her husband with their son and felt her heart swell with love and gratitude. 2 years after Michael was born, Deanna gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Marie, after Deanna's mother. Sarah was quieter than her brother, more observant, with Deanna's green eyes and Harrison's steady temperament. The children brought new joy and new challenges, but Deanna and Harrison faced them as they faced everything. Together, the ranch continued to prosper. The horse breeding operation became well known throughout Texas and into New Mexico territory, with buyers coming from as far as Colorado to purchase Rolling River horses. Deanna had a particular gift for training, her patience and gentle firmness producing horses that were both responsive and reliable. As the children grew, they naturally became part of the ranch operations. Michael, at 8 years old, could already ride as well as many adults and had a gift for working with cattle. Sarah, at 6, had inherited her mother's talent with horses and could often be found in the barn, talking softly to the animals and feeding them treats. One evening, as Deanna and Harrison sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Harrison took her hand. "Do you ever think about that day in the saloon?" he asked. "When we first met?" "Sometimes," Deanna admitted. "I was so lost then, so certain I would spend the rest of my life drifting from place to place, never finding anywhere to belong. I knew, Harrison said. The moment I saw you, something in me just knew you were meant to be here. I did not know it would turn into this, did not know we would build this incredible life together, but I knew you were important. Deanna leaned her head on his shoulder. I thought I was just passing through. I had no intention of staying, no intention of letting anyone close enough to matter. And then you offered me work, and a place to stay, and kindness when I desperately needed it. You stayed because of you, not because of me, Harrison said. You stayed because you were brave enough to stop running, to take a chance on something new. I stayed because you gave me a reason to, Deanna corrected. You showed me that home was not something I had lost forever. You helped me understand that home could be built, chosen, created. You gave me more than a job or a place to sleep. You gave me a future. They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the children played in the yard, Michael chasing Sarah around a tree while their dog barked and ran circles around them both. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and peaceful, the result of years of hard work and shared dreams. I love you, Harrison said, just as much now as the day we married, more even. I love you too, Deanna replied. Thank you for seeing me when I could not see myself. Thank you for giving me a home and a family and a life I never dreamed I could have. As the years continued to pass, the Rolling River Ranch became one of the most respected operations in the region. Michael grew into a capable young man, eventually taking on more and more responsibility for the cattle operations. Sarah's talent with horses led to her starting a small training business of her own, with people sending their difficult horses to her for gentling. Diana and Harrison grew older together, their hair graying and their hands becoming weathered from decades of hard work. But their love never dimmed. If anything, it deepened, becoming something rich and complex, built on shared experiences and mutual respect, and the kind of trust that only comes from choosing each other every single day. They celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with a party that brought together friends and family from across 3 states. Their children were grown now, Michael 22, and engaged to a sweet young woman from a neighboring ranch, Sarah 20, preparing to travel to Colorado to study advanced horse training techniques. As Deanna looked around at the gathered crowd, at the life she and Harrison had built, she felt overwhelming gratitude. She thought about the lonely, grieving woman she had been, riding into Glenrio with no purpose and no hope. She thought about the man who had offered her work and kindness and eventually love. "What are you thinking about?" Harrison asked, coming to stand beside her. "About how a chance encounter in a saloon changed my entire life," Deanna said. "About how I almost kept riding that day, almost did not stop in Glenrio at all." Harrison put his arm around her waist, pulling her close. "Thank God you were hungry and your horse was tired," Deanna laughed. "Thank God for observant cowboys who see when someone needs help, even when they are too proud to ask for it." "I did not see someone who needed help," Harrison said. "I saw someone strong and capable who had been knocked down by life but was still standing. I saw the woman I was going to spend my life with, even if I did not fully understand it at the time." They danced that night, moving slowly to music played by their son on guitar and a neighbor on fiddle. Deanna rested her head on Harrison's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and felt complete. The years ahead would bring new challenges and new joys. They would welcome Michael's children, 3 grandchildren who would run wild across the ranch, just as their father had. They would see Sarah marry and eventually return to the ranch with her husband, expanding the horse training operation. They would weather droughts and good years, economic troubles and times of plenty, always together, always partners. On their 40th wedding anniversary, Harrison took Deanna back to the hidden springs where he had first told her he wanted to build a life with her. They were both in their 60s now, moving a bit slower than they once had, but still strong and capable. "You remember what I said to you here?" Harrison asked as they sat by the water. "You said you wanted me to stay, that you wanted to build a life with me," Deanna replied, the memory as clear as if it had happened yesterday. "I got everything I wanted," Harrison said. "A life with you, children, a successful ranch, a legacy to pass on." "You gave me all of that, Deanna." "We gave each other all of that," Deanna corrected. "Neither of us could have built this alone." They sat by the water for a long time, holding hands and remembering, grateful for the chance encounter that had changed both their lives. When they finally rowed back to the ranch, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and Diana thought about how many sunsets she had watched from this land, how many moments of beauty and peace she had experienced here. She had come to Glenrio as a lonely rancher just passing through, convinced she would never find home again. But a cowboy had seen something in her, had offered her not just work but hope, and had given her a reason to stay for good. In staying, she had found more than a home. She had found love, purpose, family, and a life richer than anything she had dared to dream. Years later, as Deanna and Harrison sat on their porch in their 70s, watching their grandchildren play in the same yard where their own children had played decades before, Deanna reached over and took Harrison's hand. "I am glad I stopped in Glenrio that day," she said softly. "So am I," Harrison replied, bringing her hand to his lips. "Every single day, I am grateful that you were hungry and tired and willing to take a chance on a stranger offering work." "You were never a stranger," Deanna said. "From the moment we met, you felt like home. I just had to be brave enough to recognize it." They sat together as the sun set on another day at the Rolling River Ranch, two people who had found each other when they both needed it most, who had built an extraordinary life together, and who would love each other until their very last days. The lonely rancher had thought she was just passing through, but the cowboy had given her every reason to stay, and in staying, she had found everything she had ever needed, and so much more than she had ever dreamed possible. Their story became part of the ranch's legacy, passed down through generations as an example of how love and partnership could build something lasting and beautiful. The Rolling River Ranch continued to thrive long after Deanna and Harrison were gone, managed by their children and eventually their grandchildren, a testament to what two people could accomplish when they chose each other and worked together toward a shared dream. But for Deanna and Harrison, the true legacy was not the ranch or the success or the family name. It was the love they had shared, the life they had built, and the knowledge that they had found their home in each other, proving that sometimes the most important journeys are the ones where we stop running and choose to stay.